Welcome to DMM Downloads. We are podcasting another conversation about DMM between Jeff Crabtree and me, Rudy Rivera. Jeff and I are teamed together in Northern Colorado in a ministry we call DMM NOCO. DMM NOCO is unleashing disciple-making movements in Northern Colorado, and we thought it a good idea to start a podcast as a way to bring awareness and resourcing to ordinary people who are passionate about making multiplying disciple makers in our natural networks. Thanks for joining us in this journey. We hope you get a DMM download from this conversation. Well, hey, Jeff.
Rudy.
We're back again.
Yes, sir.
Another DMM download. And we're going to see how these mics work, Jeff. I mentioned to you the last 2 weeks, we've had some technical difficulties.
What? 2026 and we could have technical difficulties?
Yeah. Lord, help us get through this. We were going to pray. We didn't pray. So
Should we stop and pray? And then
yeah, let's stop and pray.
And then we can start.
All right, Jeff, we were just talking. Hello again.
Rudy.
We were just talking, just got a chance to pray and talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today on this download. So you and I both, and I think you more than me, but it's really good, have been talking about the Great Commission and continuing to bring to the forefront or the front burner of life Jesus' command to go and make disciples. And so we wanted to talk more today about the Great Commission. And we have a few thoughts, and I don't know where it's going to actually go. We never do, to be honest.
Yeah. If you're looking for precise details, it certainly is not here.
Dialed 970. No, just,
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever your number is. So, Jeff, Great Commission. Where should we go? I mentioned the kindness of God because we're primarily talking North Americans, though, or Northern Colorado actually too. Though I think you might know this, Hong Kong is listening, Vietnam's listening. There are other parts of the world are listening to this podcast. So shout out to everyone listening. But as we think as North Americans, we've talked about the kindness of God. Maybe there's other twists and turns we could go. Where do you want to go with this?
Well, let's just jump in, and we tend to be we can talk and we'll see where that goes, and hopefully by the grace of God and the power of the Holy Spirit we'll hit on a few things. I guess I'd still go back to disciple making movements reintroduced me to the Great Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously at that time I was nearly 40 years as a professional clergy. So it's not that I didn't know it, I hadn't exegeted it, that I hadn't preached it, I hadn't had it on every piece of literature of every church that I led or started. Mm-hmm. That wasn't it. But it was with a new perspective, a new priority, a new urgency, a new focal point. And so we could sit here and talk about the Great Commission and it'd be enough, I think for every podcast. But I think what we want to do is, at least at this particular point, maybe I'll kick off, is that I don't think anybody in a Western culture in what we call attractional church or legacy church or traditional church means to do this, but I think we've inadvertently deprioritized the Great Commission because we know it in our head and we know it's important, but when we really live it out, again, I think I can speak from experience in those nearly 40 years and then nearly 8 or 9 years in the movement world, it gets deprioritized. And so I think what we want to do is just continue to say, what did Jesus say? What did he mean by that? What does he expect of us? And he said, go. 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 So are we going? And go, it really actually, if you translate it in the Greek, is as you're going, meaning as you just live your life. When you give your life to Jesus and follow him, that's what you're doing. You're going. And so I'm going to pivot back to what we talked about earlier before that, is that as we're going, as we're living our life, that doesn't mean Jesus is adding a lot more onto our busy Western calendar. And so I'm going to pop it back to you because you were unpacking that a little bit before our talk. Is you expressed it more of maybe it's the kindness of God in a Western culture. But unpack that a little bit, Rudy, in the sense of what we were talking about is that in the sense that the Great Commission isn't burdening us to do more things in our already busy calendar. Why don't you unpack that a little bit and then we'll go back and forth.
Yeah. I do think, boy, there's so much that we need to say on these subjects, but I do think North Americans, we are captivated by busyness. Like we are busy. We're a busy culture.
Absolutely.
So we rarely live our lives in such a way that has margin. I was talking to a pastor a couple weeks ago, and they just said pastors don't have time. So like if you're a pastor listening, you're probably nodding your head, going, "Yeah, there's no time." Well, that's everybody.
And they might not have any time to even be listening to
That's
this.
probably true. You're probably not listening because there's no time, which is why we keep them at 15-ish minutes. But anyhow, but that's probably true of like pretty much everybody. Right? So I was just thinking about this a couple weeks ago when Jeff and I were talking, and I said, it struck me that the Great Commission, for the first time in my life, I think it was put into the framework of God's kindness, because a God who's overburdening, I think would say, do, and to a Westerner, we would say, I've got nothing else I can do, which I think is an issue all unto itself, right? But if that's true, if the average Western American Christian doesn't have margin, and then our God, who we want to follow and obey, says, I need you to squeeze, what is it, lemonade out of lemons or something, need you to produce more, that just feeds right into our production mindset, our busy mindset, blah, blah, blah. But actually, I think the Great Commission, because it's as you're going, I think it's actually a kindness of God to the Westerner who hears that, and I think ought to hear more appropriately, be intentional with what you're already doing.
Right.
I'm not asking you to do more. I'm asking you to be intentional, to be a disciple maker everywhere. We like to say where you live, learn, work, and play. This is just as you're going. And I think that's good news for a Western Christian.
Yep.
That ought to be good news. We ought to hear that and go, wow, great news for the lost and for the found.
Sure.
Because the found, now we get to be intentional, purposeful with our lives that we're already living where we live, learn, work, and play. We're already around people all the time. So, I don't know. That just struck me a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling you that like, because I was having a conversation with a friend, and my friend's response to our conversation was, man, I just don't have more time. And I said, what if it's not more time that we need? What if it's just intentionality with the time we do have?
Right.
I just found that kind. The phrase that came to mind was, Jesus is so kind with those words. Anyhow, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what you're saying, it's a mindset shift. It's not an add-on, it's redeeming the time we already have. So in the sense, whatever I'm doing as I'm going, as I'm living my life, like you said, where we live, learn, work, and play, my mindset is that I am on mission, that I get to do and align with and participate in the Great Commission, not with having to do extra things, but just redeem or have a mindset shift in what I'm doing already. And I do know that it takes time to have a mindset shift. And so anyway, we're just simply saying, let's go back to the Great Commission. If that was the final command, that was the last thing Jesus asked of his disciples then and now, and we're under that command, and we're under that instruction that is our mission, our commission with him, is then let's redeem, let's have a mindset shift so that whatever I'm doing, I am on mission for Jesus.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? You just help kind of think loose this idea for me. Okay, so my evangelism training in all my years in the church essentially has something to do with an add-on idea. So we're going to get trained in evangelism, and then you're going to get sent out, usually at a set time of the week, and you schedule it and you go. And I'm not saying that's wrong or bad.
Sure.
It's got its place in the world or whatever. But I do think that kind of thinking reinforces, one, the add-on idea that the Great Commission is an add-on or even optional idea, and we can unpack that sometime. But also, I think it emphasizes not to redeem the time that we do have, that you're already a father, husband, friend, neighbor, or whatever, but also, again, to essentially become a quote-unquote missionary. Well, what are quote-unquote missionaries? These are paid professionals. These are, we talk about like pastoral staff or church leadership or staff members of churches, or even I'm going to become a missionary. I'm going to get trained to go become a missionary. When we say DMM, is ordinary Christians,
right,
implanting the DNA of movement, right? It's in our natural networks. It's everyday Christians, which I think is, again, kind of Jesus to say, let's leave this to just the professionals or the trained or the experts or the ones with all the time. I think he's saying, no, this is for everyone. You want to follow me? Everyone gets to play. Everyone gets to participate. Everybody gets the time that we have. We all have the same amount of time, which is, for me, why I've eliminated the phrase, I'm busy. I'm not busy. I am limited, just like you're limited. We're all limited. And so what do you use your time for? That's a whole nother conversation. But anyhow, that's what you just helped me kind of see. It's like, no, there's actually this other side of that in the churches, in our structures, we tend to turn this into essentially a professional side of things. And I think DMM addresses that by putting it into the hands of ordinary Christians. Anyhow,
Sure.
Any thoughts on that?
I think
and maybe as we're kind of coming to close.
I think I just simply say, at least in my own, we all have stories. And so my story was obviously in getting in DMM and reprioritizing the Great Commission, putting it on the marquee, if you will, of my life. And my neighborhood, I'll use that illustration, is when I came home, then I was selfish. And so I didn't redeem the time. And yet when I got introduced to DMM and the Great Commission again and our training, which are habits of a multiplying disciple, is that it starts with the heart of God. When I began to pray, God, give me your heart for my neighborhood, for my lost neighbors, then I wanted to go. So it was still time in my neighborhood, but instead of me just hanging out at my house, I wanted to go and interface with neighbors. So I guess what I simply say is, some people go, oh, you're trying to manipulate this, but it's still time, but I'm saying we're talking about an intentional mindset shift to be on mission where we live, learn, work, and play. But ultimately it comes back to having God's heart for lost people.
Yeah.
Because then you want to go. Now that I don't always want to go, I'll be honest, but overall, where I was 8 or 9 years ago to where I'm in now, it's not even close that I want to go. So the Great Commission isn't a duty per se only, and it's not an add-on. It's because we get God's heart. We redeem those spaces and times because we want to go. Does that make sense?
It does. And I would say, and he's said that to all of us.
Right.
Right. Again, it's not like you, because
Every
Jeff,
follower.
you're special, you're a pastor,
Sure.
you got time. No, it's all of us. And that again, is kind, I think, of God to not put it behind lock and key, behind professionalism or training. This is, hey, I want to give you my heart, and then I want you to go and do it with what you have. And each of us have that capacity. All of us have it. Anyhow.
Yeah, so I think my last thing would be, if you're listening, I'd just invite you to take a look at the Great Commission and go, and as you're going, and can you wrestle with that? Can you say, am I? And am I willing? And if you answer no to either one of those, then say, God, give me your heart for lost people. I want to go as I'm going, where I live, learn, work, and play. I want to redeem the time, and I want to be on mission.
Yeah. And if you find yourself in that category of listener, reach out to us. So we don't have the corner in the market of this, but we do have some training opportunities, and you and I have been talking about that here in 2026, maybe offering some Zoom opportunities to get some training in the habits of a multiplying disciple. I think it's fantastic, not because we do it, but because it's just great material. And it will, I think, if you follow it, if you apply it, will put you into the category of somebody that's attempting to lean into the Great Commission. So anyhow, good thoughts, Jeff. Thanks for sharing today.
Thanks, Rudy.
Thanks, Jeff, for that engaging download. In DMM, we like to say that disciples are learners. I know I'm learning a lot from my conversations with you, Jeff. From all of us in DMM NoCo, we hope you got a DMM download from the conversation today. Don't forget to leave this podcast a review wherever you are listening online. If you found this conversation helpful, please head over to our site, dmmnoco.com, where you can find more content for your DMM journey, including a self-paced Habits of a Multiplying Disciple course. The course is designed to give you practical next steps to becoming a DMM practitioner and multiplying disciple maker. You can take that course for free at dmmnoco.com. We will be back next week with another engaging DMM download episode. Until then, may you hear from God through His Spirit and take simple steps of obedience in what you hear.